Well, when the Senate Democrats yesterday gave the president near absolute power to appoint whoever he wants, just as long as the Democrat majority in the Senate approves it, they also gave him the power to single-handedly shape one of the most controversial pieces of Obamacare, the so-called Independent Payment Advisory Board, IPAB, as some call it. The group is tasked with finding ways to cut Medicare costs with what critics are calling almost godlike powers. This has been very controversial, this board. And according to my next guest, almost zero accountability will be had to the people. Elizabeth Price Foley is a constitutional law professor at Florida International University College of Law. Elizabeth, good to see you. This is the panel that led to the Sarah Palin claim of death panels, which was then maligned and so on. But this is a group that's going to control costs of Medicare. And tell us why what Harry Reid did yesterday is so important to this group.
Yeah, it's an amazing power move because basically what it's going to allow the president to do is appoint these 15 members of the IPAB with a simple 51 vote majority in the Senate rather than the usual 60. And that's a real game changer because that's going to allow the president to put the most radical people on this important board that does have these godlike powers. So you could have someone with very radical views about health care rationing, about how or how much to pay providers, and that's going to have big effects for seniors.
We don't have anybody on the board yet, so we don't know who the president might have in mind, but Harry Reid has just made it a whole lot easier for the president to pick, whomever his heart desires. And let's not forget that he used Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel to help construct this law in the first place, somebody whose views on some of these issues are rather controversial.
That's right. This whole board was designed to sort of bypass the political process to allow a bunch of unelected, politically unaccountable elites to make these tough spending decisions about health care for our seniors. And I went back and I looked at this law very carefully, and what's interesting to me is that there's at least 4 or 5 times in the law where a 3/5 supermajority is required by the Senate for various procedural reasons. So the Democrats who wrote this law and passed it without any Republican support are clearly saying in various portions that 60 votes, 3/5 of the Senate is 60 votes, is an important threshold. And here they are now, after the law is passed, dispensing with one of the most important presupposed 3/5 thresholds, and that is who gets to be appointed to this important board. So, at best this maneuver is sort of hypocritical, and at worst it's devious.
But this board, IPAB, is it's not allowed by law to ration care. So how concerned should people be about who gets on it?
You should be very concerned. The law does have this short provision that says the IPAB doesn't have the power to ration care, but that's a Potemkin village, because what the IPAB does have power to do is to decide how much Medicare spending should be cut, and it can cut it as much as it wants to, by the way. And then it also has this incredible power to pass any rule that, quote-unquote, relates to Medicare. That could be virtually anything. Nobody knows what that means. So this is a board that has the power to really ratchet back Medicare spending, and as you ratchet back Medicare spending, what you get is, an incredible limitation on access to services. Providers are going to start dropping out of Medicare like flies, and when that happens, seniors aren't going to be able to see their doctor like they can today. We might have the kind of queues developing that they have, in the UK and Canada.
Elizabeth, thank you for being here with your perspective, and her last point picks up on our next segment. Elizabeth, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me.